All right, everybody, we are back with Dr. Joseph Pinzone, the medical director of the Hyperthermia Cancer Institute in Santa Monica, California. This is our second conversation, or part two of our conversation. In part one, we talked about the science of heat and cancer and hyperthermia as a viable treatment option. And so if you're curious about that, we'll link to that video below. In this video, what I want to do is dive into a little bit, Dr. Pinzone, of who you are and what drove you to this kind of area of passion, but also talk about your facility and some unique things happening in Santa Monica. So Dr. Pinzone, thank you very much for being with us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Of course, it is an honor. So let's talk about you a little bit to begin with. So why and how did you find yourself in this field?
So I am an endocrinologist by training. Now, interestingly, I have always been interested in tumors and in cancer. And I don't, it's completely organic. So I'll give you an example. Now, within endocrinology, unless you have the unusual instance of somebody who has very widely metastatic thyroid cancer, I am the doctor. I'm the main doctor, much like a urologist might be for prostate cancer, right? So most of the time, and for most cancers, it's an oncologist, but it's not like I have no training in cancer at all. I mean, cancer's in the field. So then I finished my fellowship where I did research on pituitary tumors, which are neoplasms, but they're not cancer, but they're tumors. And my first academic job that I took, I wrote a grant to the NIH. I had written a grant in fellowship, and I was fortunate enough to receive that grant. And then when I transitioned to being a faculty member at an academic institution, I wrote another grant, but there was nobody around doing pituitary tumor research. And as a junior faculty member, you like to work with a mentor. It's always best to do that early in your career. And so I was very interested in breast cancer. And so I wrote a grant, and it was for 5 years support, and I got it. And I was thrilled. So
2 for 2.
2 for 2. 2 for 2. And I utilized that grant to go from, because I don't have my PhD, but I go from a neophyte in the lab to somebody who was running a lab when I got recruited to another academic institution where I still had a mentor, but was much more self-driven in understanding the molecular biology of what drives breast cancer cells to go to bone. That specific area of interest actually I would get calls from recruiters all the time for different things. I wasn't really interested in going into a company, even though I have an MBA. I understand business at some level. But this particular biotech company sounded really enticing, and it was right in that area of supportive cancer therapy for people with solid tumors and who have bone metastases. So I had expertise in that area. So I was the lead medical person for development of that particular therapeutic. Loved the company, but
that was a pharmaceutical development?
Yes, that was a biotech company. Yes, that's right. And again, it's all in my bio. And when I decided to go out on my own, I wanted to start my own company, and muddled through a couple of different areas, and then hit on consulting. So I did a lot of consulting for pharmaceutical companies. So I knew a lot about how to develop therapies, both from my experience in biotech and then from a consulting practice. Then, just by happenstance, I met my current partner, who's not a physician, and we just hit it off. Okay. And in doing so, we became very close friends. And I realized, interestingly, in 2014, so as soon as I left the biotech company, I wrote a book, and this was well before I met my partner, mind you.
Yeah.
It's called Fireballs in My Eucharist, and it's on Amazon. And I'd say it not so much as a plug, just it was kind of cute because why I wrote it, and this will figure into part 3. It was a guide for what people should do when confronted with cancer. The name
there you go.
comes from the fact that when I was in my residency, there was a woman who came into the emergency room, and I was asking her about her past medical history. And she was telling me, and then she said, "Oh, and I have fireballs in my Eucharist." And I said, "Oh, tell me more." And it turned out what she was trying to tell me was she had fibroids in her uterus. And so, and so I realized.
So close.
Exactly. Yeah. Just right there. And I realized that people really need an orientation as to what to do,
Sure.
to get cancer. So I wrote the book. It's been out there for a while now, probably needs an update and such, but pretty fundamental stuff.
Yeah.
So then I met my partner and got into the field, knew about it first during my fellowship in the early 90s, hadn't heard anything else about it. And then as we became friends, realized there was a way for me to get involved in building this business out in a way that had never been done before. So we made the decision to be a freestanding center, which works very, very well, because there's 2 ways that I help people. Well, first, let me tell you, hopefully your audience is getting this. I do love to communicate. I want to make sure that things are clear. I want to make sure that the patient knows that I know that they're the boss. Okay. Doesn't mean I'm shy. Doesn't mean I'm not going to give you my opinion. But I recognize you don't have to take it. I mean, it's your body, it's your life. And, it's a lot of variables go into what am I going to do next. And so what ends up happening is it is surprising how many people are in a place where they don't know what their next move is going to be. Some people know, most people know, a large, maybe not the majority, but a large portion don't know. So when those patients come, what I didn't realize early on when I first started as medical director was, sure, I'm offering this therapy, and this therapy is one of the 2 major ways that I am helping people. The other way is I'm using my good medical judgment combined with my understanding of tumor biology to provide them with high-level guidance. And what I mean by that is if they are either at a curable stage, at a stage 4, or if we can just shrink their tumor enough, they'll go from a stage 2 or 3 to a curable stage where they can have surgery. Okay.
Yep.
Right. So those are some of the, just options goals that we want to kind of deal with. I can help them to put together a team because we have, major institutions around us. We're located in Santa Monica. So we have Providence St. John's, we have UCLA, we have USC, we have Cedars-Sinai, we have City of Hope Cancer Center. So, we are among the medical destinations in the nation.
Yeah, you're in a Mecca.
We are. And so what will end up happening is we have the vast majority of our patients are local, but again, a large swath come to us from around the country. And when we end up with this conversation, because the number of treatments that people get are fairly numerous, and they take about an hour each or so, the nurses that we have developed very, very close relationships. I am fortunate because we're not patient heavy because they require so many treatments. We can only accommodate so many patients. We're floor to ceiling with patients. Mind you, we're planning on expanding. But that said, when they come to us, I'm able to spend time. And I spend more time, I would say, than probably almost any other clinician. And I know that because my prior life was working in endocrinology where, you just have a certain amount of time, and when you're in a patient-heavy environment, whether that be oncology, it's just the way medicine works these days. The numbers have gone
the
way
revolving
up.
door. Yeah.
It's tough. And so when I have that time to contemplate and to read them, and their mindset, the patient's mindset, and begin to say, well, what about this? Well, what about this? These are the options that I see, that's the second way I help them, is with guidance. So, and that surprised
And that's
me.
that consulting background. Yeah.
It is, in a
I see
way.
how it fits.
It's listening to the patient. In a prior life with a pharmaceutical company, consulting would be listening to a client and truly trying to understand what they need that they can't see they need. That's your job. That's my job. And whether they do it or not, whether a company implements a consulting recommendation or whether a patient implements a consultation recommendation it's up to them.
Right.
But my job is to get down to the essence of what I think their stated goals are and how we might get to them, and to create the team. And in doing that, it's unbelievably satisfying. I mean, endocrinology is a fascinating area. I've done a lot of good, but in these 4 years, I think in terms of heavy duty impact on people's lives, probably more so than all of the prior 25 years put together.
Yeah, that's a pretty amazing journey that you've been on that brought you here, and I can attest to. So Rachel and I were there in Santa Monica with you for 3 months back in 2020. So kind of first few months of the pandemic, and you're right. I mean, it really felt like we were in partnership, and you were helping us think through our options. Yep. You were helping us think through, because we were new to the area. So doctors we could speak with, we were looking for a naturopath to meet with. We were looking for, potentially looking to get some extra chemotherapy in the area. And kind of as we were going through that, you and the whole team there, it felt very much so with us and going, all right, we're going to go hand in hand and we're going to figure this out. Which was not expected, because I think, I don't know if this might be typical, but I think I expected they do hyperthermia. That's what they do. And so they'll speak about hyperthermia and then we're on our own for everything else. And it felt very much so like, they're here to advise and consult and help us think through all aspects of at least this 3 months that we're spending here, and partner with us through that.
Absolutely. And the rationale from my perspective is, first and foremost, because that is the reason I became a doctor. Otherwise, why do it? I mean, if you're not going to, so the true help to people, I do believe I have an ability to do that. That's more than what I thought I had even when I first started. Number one. Number two, I also, we are building a business here, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, and in doing so, I want people to do well, first and foremost, for them. I mean, there are many people that we've made decisions that on occasion will go against the business, but will be for the patient. The vast majority align just fine. But that's my point. We need to get good outcomes for everybody involved. And so, that's the goal. And I also need people to feel comfortable, because if they're not feeling comfortable, I was just talking to a patient earlier today, and he was all over the place. He has head and neck cancer, and he was thinking about this therapy and that. I said, look, let me break it down for you. You are in a place where this is curable. Your window is closing because you've waited about 9 months. It's your call, but there's a very high cure rate if we can use a combination of chemotherapy, radiation, and hyperthermia. We're the only game in town in terms of hyperthermia. You're free to go anywhere else, and you're still going to get a really good outcome, even if you don't use hyperthermia. Just laid it on the table. Yeah. And he came here, but the more important part of the story than him coming here is you could tell he was frazzled as could be in our first meeting. And we
analysis paralysis.
That is exactly correct. And what ended up happening by the time he's now been here for, 2 months or so, we looked at each other. We're like, this has been great. I mean, he's just so calm, so settled with the decision, because, it's never going to get easy. We're not aiming for easy so much as smooth and assured.
Sure.
Easy, sure. There are easier paths, but they're not always available. So I'd like it as easy as possible. But the real thing I'd like is, particularly in the patients who cure is the clear aim, we just need to get baseline here. You could choose not to do what I'm telling you, but let's get some clarity. And once we got that clarity, he trusted me, and it worked beautifully. And again, we're part of the puzzle. I mean, we're not the main reason he's getting, he's, fingers crossed, aiming for cure.
Right.
We're part of it. But we're part of it in two ways. We're part of it in therapy, and we're part of it in the relationship.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So I want to change tacks a little bit to an interesting aspect of the facility that I didn't actually understand the story behind it until we actually met up at the Metabolic Health Summit, and that's the paper cranes. There are origami paper cranes all over throughout the rooms, and it is there's a sense of beauty to that, right? And it's very, very pleasant. But you shared a little bit of the story behind that when we got together, and it hits a little different when you know that backstory. So what is the backstory and the importance of the paper cranes?
Yeah, so the origin comes from Japan, and there was a practice whereby if you were able to make 1,000 cranes, your wish, which was often applied in the realm of health and wellness, would come true. So there was a young girl who, after the atomic bombs were dropped, ended up with cancer. And she was set on making those 1,000 cranes, and she got to 600 and some, and then she passed, and her friends completed the 1,000 for her and created a monument to her. And so it is really just a sign of the hope, regardless. We're of course outcome driven, but you can have hope at any stage, and yet still deal with the reality of the situation, and then have really your friends and family around you to support you. So it embodies all of that. And it is, as you say, it's an elegant little part of what we do. We're a bespoke practice, and that's just a little niche that we developed. And we always have one sitting on the pillow, right, as the patient comes in each day.
I think that's beautiful. And you're right. I think that speaks to relationship, right? Yes. You do want to be outcome driven from a healthcare provider standpoint, and from a business standpoint, but driving to relationship and saying, regardless of outcome, we are here with you and we're doing this together. Yeah. I think that's very cool, and gives more significance to those cranes that we had every day, as Rachel was coming in every day, 6 days a week. So that's very cool. Well, Dr. Pinzone, thank you. I think that's an elegant place to end this part of our conversation. Thank you for sharing that.
My pleasure. Thank you.